there was a famous scholar, I think he lived in Mecca, right? Sayyid Muhammad Alawi al-Maliki, very revered by the traditional camp, that you accused him of committing blatant shirk, so to speak. Can you talk about that?
So I think this is symptomatic exactly of what I'm saying of some of the potential problems, even of third wave Najdi Da'wah. So I said the first wave was definitely hardcore, definitely very much like the modern, extremist groups that we have. And it is my presumption, as I said, that Abu Muhammad al-Maqdisi is essentially reviving in the modern times first wave Najdi Da'wah. But even third wave Najdi Da'wah is problematic insofar as it does preach that anybody who calls out to the dead is committing major shirk and kufr. And that is, what do you do when you have somebody like Alawi al-Maliki, Allah yarhamu, who was the greatest scholar of the other camp, who said, no, it's not shirk to ask the need for, and he's using tawassul al-zighat, the same standard points going back 800 years. Now, here's the irony. 2005 was when this controversy happened. I was straight out of Medina by 3 months. And Sheikh Alawi Maliki, Allah yarhamu, was the greatest alim of that strand of Islam. Highly respected, greatly revered. Now, I studied with teachers who, in front of my own ears, they called him, he is the caller to paganism in our times. Some of the great, and because I respect those ulama, some of them were the grand muftis and whatnot, I'm not going to even mention their names explicitly out of respect to them. Some of the greatest ulama of the late 80s, early 90s of the Salafi da'wah had him banned from preaching and teaching. One of them spoke to the king, King Fahad, at the time, and I know this because his students told me from when I was sympathetic to that strand, this isn't an enemy telling me, to see if he could be put on trial for heresy to the level of execution, because he's calling for the worship of other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of our, I'm out of respect, I'm not mentioning that name, but it is well known to those who know. Many of our ulama of the Najdi third wave, when I was a part of that movement, third wave Najdi da'wah, wrote treatises and pamphlets with extremely harsh adjectives. He is, one of them said, he is the Amr ibn Luhay of our times. Amr ibn Luhay was the one who began idolatry in pre-Islamic Arabia. Very harsh terminology. I come along, third wave Najdi da'wah, fresh off of the Medina paradigm, and Alawi Maliki dies, and I quoted one of the mildest statements that I knew my mashayikh to say about him. One of the mildest things. And he was a deviant, to caller to, worshipping other than Allah. This is very, very gentle compared to what the giants of third wave Najdi Da'wah have said. And if you don't believe me, go back and look up what they said about this individual. And I watered it down and I quoted it in English. And what happened, happened. And it mired al-Maghrib in controversy. I was attacked. And at the time, I defended myself because I was third wave Najdi Da'wah. Now, I unabashedly say, I ask Allah's forgiveness. I ask Allah to forgive me for quoting my teachers about this individual. Even if I disagree with some of the aspects of what he taught, he represents a strand of Islam that goes back 800 years. And it has amongst its luminaries great ulama like Ibn Hajar al-Haythami and others who are essentially arguing the same thing that this individual is arguing. Even if I disagree, there is no need for this harsh terminology of pseudo-takfir and almost bid'ah and shirk and kufr. Look, he has his views. They go back. I have my views. And I still don't agree with Alawi al-Maliki's finer positions. But you know what? In my heart, I genuinely do not have any hatred of him. And I don't view him as being a caller to paganism. A'udhu billah, a'udhu billah. He's a Muslim alim who represents a tradition that considers himself to be following Ghazali and whatnot. And you're going to say that he's an Amr ibn Luhay of our times? I'm sorry. This is third wave Najdi Da'wah. If you're uncomfortable by calling him Amr ibn Luhay, then you are uncomfortable with some of the main figures of third wave Najdi Da'wah out of respect to them. And I studied with them. I'm not going to mention their names, but you all know their names if you know third wave Najdi Da'wah. So I am no longer that person. I ask Allah's forgiveness. And then I apologize to anybody who was offended. My only excuse, and this is not an excuse, but it's simply I was groupthink at the time. and I was following what my teachers explicitly taught me, explicitly, and I saw with my own eyes the hatred that they had when they spoke against this person. Before we move on to the topic that you want to say, I want to conclude this first phase by saying, this first interview part of it, by saying something very explicitly. Listen, every average Muslim needs to follow a madhab and needs to follow a creed. You can't reinvent the wheel. No problem being an Athari, no problem being a Hanbali, no problem being an Ash'ari, no problem being a Shafi'i, no problem. Whatever you do, be happy with what you're doing of the mainstream Islam, and don't look down at the other groups. Be what you are, no problem. I am still to this day overall Athari and Hanbali, right? So no problem. But the problem comes when you genuinely view these other strands as being batil, or away from the haqq, or enemies of Allah and His Messenger, or even misguided. I do not view mainstream Ghazalian Islam to be misguided. I might still disagree with it in my personal life, but misguidance is a big term. Bid'ah and dalala are big terms, and this is where I disagree. Even if I'm Athari to this day, the Ghazalian strand or the other mainstream Islams. Now, what is mainstream Islam? Hadith Jibreel. If you believe in the 6 arkan, and if you pray and fast and whatnot, this is mainstream Sunnism. If you view the Quran and Sunnah as being your primary sources, if you respect the Sahaba as being figures of taqwa and virtue, alhamdulillah. With final point, I'll conclude. Allah will not punish somebody for being an Ash'ari or a Sufi or a Salafi, nor will a person enter Jannah by these creeds. Reward and punishment comes from Iman and Taqwa and Tazkiyah. This is what Allah says in the Quran. The mu'min, the muttaqi, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. And Tazkiyah is found in the Salafi, it is also found in the Sufi, it is found in the Deobandi, it is found in the Tablighi, it is found in the Ikhwani, it is found in the Jamaati, it is found in the average Muslim who doesn't have anything to do with this firaq. These advanced concepts in and of themselves will not push you forward into Jannah, nor will they save you from Jahannam. What will save you is your genuine, raw, uncategorized Iman and Taqwa, where you worship Allah Azza wa Jal and you want to come closer to Him. Whether you're following this strand or that strand, they're all mainstream interpretations. And even if I have a personal preference, the other ones are not Jahannami oriented. They're not evil and bad and mudil. There's give and take, room to breathe. And with that, inshallah, we move to your second phase of conversation.
I do want to have one quick follow-up. Being that you were there during his lifetime, do you have regrets that you never benefited from him?
Yes, definitely. I wish I had met him, no doubt. I wish I had met him. I wish that I had just interacted with him. I never did. And there were famous ulama in Medina who were of the same school that I was warned against. Don't go to these people. They're gonna, brainwash you. SubhanAllah. I was that person that if your teacher says something, and anybody says something else, you're going to warn against them. Just like my critics are now warning against me. I was that person, which is why I understand. كَذَلِكَ كُنْتُم مِّن قَبْلُ فَمَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْكُمْ. 20 years ago, I was that kid, that overzealous. If you go against my teachers, you're dal mudil, PDF files. And if I had video back then, I would have probably released a video refutation. Alhamdulillah, Allah allowed many of us to move on intellectually, but I have regrets, and of those regrets, and somebody's asked me, I think in a previous interview, who is the main person who's alive that you really look up to, genuinely consider to be a Shaykh al-Islam of our times, like the true person? And it's awkward to say this because obviously nobody knows the future. Maybe the person I look up to might change. We ask Allah for thabat. But my mentor, genuinely, that I really look up to, who's still alive, is Shaykh Salman al-Awda. May Allah Azza wa Jal release him from the tyranny that he is undergoing now.
We had the son on the show.
The what?
We had the son on the show.
MashaAllah, I did not even know that.
Yes.
So Shaykh Salman al-Awda is essentially one of the people who put this kernel in my head of who I am now. These ideas that I have now, one of the first people to meet that I met, this is again 1999 or 2, I went to his house when you weren't supposed to go to his house, we went surreptitiously, secretly. We're not supposed to tell anybody, or else the madakhila will drive us crazy and whatnot. But we drove all the way to Qasim, when we were I studied with Ibn Uthaymeen. So when we were there, we arranged a meeting and had a number of meetings. After that, we met in London. We had a number of conversations, correspondence. And I genuinely admire his evolution from who he was, 30 years ago. And I feel that his evolution is perfect for his people in place, and mine is for my people in place. And we are going on similar paths, but because of our cultures and peoples, we're going slightly different. But I feel in him, I shouldn't say a kindred spirit, because he's way better in every sense than me, and may Allah protect him and whatnot. But I genuinely admire Sheikh Salman Al-Auda as being someone who I can see went through this, because he also, and I know for a fact, because I know much about him that is not public, because again, I'm in those circles, he also is no longer a Najdi, or same thing with the Athari, the same things. And here's the irony, he didn't influence me directly. He didn't tell me, oh Yasir, don't be a Najdi. No, it's just the conversations you have with him, they put something in your mind, and you start thinking, and you realize, you know what? It doesn't make sense anymore. It doesn't add up. And so that's the person I really consider to be very similar. And when I say similar, I'm not comparing myself to him. He's Allama, Alim, he's Shaykh al-Islam, and I am somebody who's a tilmeed. But in terms of evolution, I mean, Shaykh Salman Al-Auda. And may Allah grant him thabat and release him from what he is in.
I mean,